What are you going to do with your life? You got to figure things out. Who are you? What is life? What is there to do? What should you do? You should do this. You should do that. Our life is full of all of these ideas and stories of what all this is. Because the reason for that is simply because no one knows. And since a fairly young age, I was curious and asking questions and challenging things. And for example, I didn't know why I should care so much about school and about getting a certain letter on a test or a certain number on a piece of paper. And I was drawing my self-esteem from that. I felt a certain way because I was pretty much being told that if I didn't perform a certain way in this box, that I shouldn't feel good, that this would determine my success, and that I should do well in school because then I can go to college, and because then I can get a good job, and because then I can have a family. And it's like life is all set up, and you just have to walk down the certain path that people tell you to. And there's all of these things that life tells us. But we don't get to see for ourselves for the most part. We don't get to determine what this means for ourselves. And so, if that's the case, then we don't really have freedom. We don't have freedom of choice. We don't have the freedom to think for ourselves. We don't have the freedom to decide. And it's interesting when you really just pause and look around that all of this is designed to keep us away from the fact that nobody knows what all of this is. Nobody knows why we're here. Nobody knows why we're able to feel, why we're able to think, any of this. We've made all of this up. And I think we're terrified at the fact that nothing makes sense, that it's absurd. And so we have all of these comfort mechanisms. We have all of these things to escape the reality of that. We're just thrown into this existence, and then at some point it seems that we no longer exist, that we're no longer on this physical plane. And so what we think of life is just the absence of death, but I mean, who really knows? And the reason I'm saying all of this is just because we suffer because we assume. We think we should do this. We think we should do that. There's always an authority. There's always someone that you're listening to, and it's probably not yourself. And I sit with these things quite often, and I feel like I've had some existential crisis moments, and I realize that I'm only 22, and it might just be like, hey, just do this, just do that, just accept that this is the way things are. People will often say that. This is just the way things are. And so they're just kind of submitting to the fact that because we're told that this is the way things are, that we have to believe that. That we just have to give up all of our faculties and abilities to wonder, to wander, to be curious, to question, to challenge. And I know this video might sound a bit all over the place because, well, you know, everything is all over the place, and things are always in the mind, you know, and this is just me expressing myself. We'll get to more of a structured, organized YouTube video style, but in this, I just want to open you up to what has gotten me into expressing myself, which is just the fact that we don't know anything. The only thing we can know is that we don't know. The only things that we can figure out are things that we created in the first place. And it really is like we live within a world within a world that we've created, and we have created a world that is known to us to avoid the truth of the unknown world. That there's kind of this natural world where things just are, where things are happening, where nothing matters. There is no being, sorry, there is no meaning. There's just existence. There's just what is. But our human mind needs something more than that. And so we have language, and so we say this matters, and so we apply meaning, and so we say that this is what happiness is, this is what success is, this is what all of these things are. Like we've defined these terms to live in a world that makes sense to us. And naturally, our psyche and our mind and our being and everything that is us and our essence cannot fully adapt to that. And that's why we feel like we're not enough. That's why we feel like something is always missing. Everyone's saying, like, who do you want to be? Who do you want to become? As though when you were born, you weren't enough. Like, why do we have to become something? It's like we begin our lives and we're conditioned and programmed to think that we're not whole as we are. That there's something that we have to accomplish. That there's some goal. That there's a finish line, a destination, some place that we have to get to in order to complete life. And that's just this it's just this tale, this game of the ego, because it can never be fulfilled, it can never be satisfied. And if you approach life that way, then you're setting yourself up for misery, for suffering, for unnecessary pain, for constantly trying to prove yourself, trying to belong, looking for approval and validation, not having love from just acceptance and being itself. And I know there's a lot of complications because it's like, well, we have to have a job, or we have to make money, we have to provide for ourselves, we have to survive and do all these things, and it's not that simple. And I understand that as well, but I think with some perspective and being able to zoom out, that so many of our problems could be solved by just realizing that we've created the problems in the first place, that we could better manage our energy, that we could be more aware so that we could choose what we're doing and how we're going about life and who we're trusting. That there's such a disconnect from our nature. And that's why there's so much attachment. That's why there's so much anxiety. That's why there's so much insecurity and so much longing for something that can never really stay with us because it doesn't come from us. And in all of this, what I'm trying to say is that to live freely and to live in a place of love, which I think is what we're all really after, it's not happiness or success, that we have to be able to step into a place that is the unknown, that is the uncertain, that is the mystery of life, and it's also the miraculous nature of life that we don't know, and that is liberating, because it's our need to know that causes the problems and the suffering and the unpleasantness. Having to always tie ourselves to a belief or to identify with a group, and we have all these labels and ways of masking the fullness of what something is. And by letting go of this constant need to put our human fingertips on everything, we can not take things as seriously. Because we only take things seriously because we know. You only take yourself seriously because you think you know who you are, or there's this idea of who you are, and you have to keep that image alive. It's like we're all actors in this game, in this thing that we are pretending to understand, and we pretend so much that we've convinced ourselves of what it actually is. And I just want to leave you in this video with the thought that maybe things aren't what you think they are. That what if they weren't what you think they are? That what if you let go of everything that you thought you knew? What if you could just start fresh right now in this moment? What if today didn't have to be the same as yesterday? What if you didn't have to carry out the stories about who you are and what the world is and how you should think, feel, and act, what you should and shouldn't do? What if you wouldn't have to bring that with you everywhere you go? What if we could just be aware that this moment is all there is, that the here and now exists, but these ideas only exist because we give them attention, because we choose to continuously bring them to life, because we feel like we have to, or else we won't know who we are, and we'll think that we're lost, and we think that there's a problem with being lost, when those that believe they're not lost are the ones that really are. That maybe just a little bit more time with yourself and away from the world and all the outside noise could lead to a cultivation and expansion of your awareness, so that you could have a better relationship with you, with the peace of being alone, with the solitude, with the stillness. And as you realize that you're constantly projecting, you're constantly reflecting that the nature of life is inside and out. But if you're not consciously here, then it's outside in. And then the external world determines who you are, determines how you feel, determines what you think, determines what questions you ask, determines what you do with your entire life. And so it gets to a point where, like, are you even a human being when you've given up all the things that makes a human being a human being?